guys, welcome into the Shadow Box. I am Carlise, your host. I am the owner of A Peace of Mind and the Chakra Box. Today we have with us Nicole Harmony. She is considered a digital nomad. Nicole creates and holds space for others in their healing. As a trauma-informed holistic practitioner, she works with both men and women who may be challenged with stress, chronic pain, chronic illness and or disease, anxiety, and depression. She specializes in the integration of the little one inside of all of us. And that's another aspect of shadow, too. That's the portion that is accountable for sabotaging our goals. In addition to that, creating unhealthy patterns and habits, behaviors, and limiting beliefs. She also is the creator of a methodology that she actually came up with herself, the memory integration technique. She utilizes several different modalities, and together she will access the limiting beliefs while repatterning the brain to create new neural pathways. So, Nicole, I'm going to turn it over to you. That is a lot.
It's a mouthful.
I'm going to turn it over to you so you can kind of just give us a little bit more detail about yourself and what you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carlise, for having me, first of all. I'm just so honored to be here and sharing my message on your platform. My name is Nicole Harmony, and I've been doing this for, almost 5 years now. Okay. And the memory integration technique is something that I curated a couple of years ago. Actually, it's more like 3 years ago now. It got downloaded to me actually through source, spirit, the divine. When I was working with a client, a male client, he was like one of my first clients actually, and he was having a lot of fear and a lot of trauma surrounding by keeping him bedridden. And he really wanted to get out of bed, and he wanted to be with his family, his wife. And within maybe like 1 or 2 sessions of doing what I now call the memory integration technique, he was able to go downstairs and have lunch with his family for the first time in like 2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
That's a long time. And that's, that concept of your mind is like it's like your prison.
Oh, yeah.
So to be, in bedridden.
Could also be your freedom, too.
Yeah. Because, the possibilities, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
The possibilities. So let me know a little bit about your mission and, the stigma. And I love that you mentioned the guy that you worked with, because we also talked about the stigma around men and their mental health. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about that.
So, men are constantly taught how to suppress their emotions rather than actually feeling them. Right off the bat is man up, suck it up, buttercup, kind of thing. And that is just creating a culture of suppression, men that do not know how to hold themselves and their emotions. So if they don't know how to hold themselves and their emotions, how are they going to hold their female partner, their feminine partner, or really any woman in their life? And so, it was, it came to me a couple of years ago when I was, niching down in my coaching practice. And I was working with this business coach, and he gave me this marketing research thing to do, this exercise. I threw it out there to my community, and 85% of the people that came back were men. And so I interviewed about 40 to 50 men. And all of them were struggling, challenged with trauma, divorce, giving up on love, giving up on their relationships, giving up on themselves. And I realized that men do not have a place to lay down their pain without it being weaponized against them. Yeah. The vulnerability is weak, kind of thing. That's what the quote unquote red pill society out there is, really pushing right now. And it's not a weakness, it's a strength. And trying to bring more awareness to that became my mission.
Yeah, I love that, because men usually are known to be the providers.
Yeah.
They are known to be the protectors.
Yeah.
And so when we kind of dehumanize them in a sense, of not realizing like, hey, they have feelings too.
Yeah.
They stay in their mind. The mind is a terrible thing to waste, one thing, and the mind can, again, be the prison.
Right.
And so, as women, I think that we have to kind of change that narrative and make that safe space for them, not making them feel as if they're weak or they're less than a protector.
Right.
They can't protect you properly if they don't feel safe mentally.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. So I love this concept that you have, this name that you have for yourself, digital nomad. Where did this come from?
I mean, I don't really know where it's derived. All I know is that how I feel about it is that I get to explore the world while still serving my clients and my community. And I get to experience growth and expansion in all different areas of the world while still serving my community.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. I love it. I mean, all I have to do my job is have a Wi-Fi signal, my iPad, a piece of paper, and a pen. Like, that's really it. Yeah. I mean, clothes, obviously, but, to do my job.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So why not? I mean, I'm young, I'm unattached. I don't have kids. I don't have a husband. I don't have pets. Why not? Yeah.
Now, where are you originally from?
Here in Dallas, Texas, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
But I spent 25 years of my adult life on and off in St. Pete, Florida. So I left Texas a long, long time ago and have never returned. But family is still here. So I'm here for the holidays.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. So let's talk about your definition of memory integration technique. Like, what are the details in this fabulous thing you've come up with?
So it's designed to create a safe and supportive space for you to be vulnerable and for those parts to really come forward that have been disassociated, shamed, judged, criticized, suppressed from the childhood. And it fosters this environment for the parts to kind of come back into a beautiful mosaic. Because the way I look at it is when, you have a heart and little pieces of it start to break apart, parts of your soul. So the memory integration technique is designed to bring those shattered pieces back in to create a beautiful mosaic of the heart. So it's still shattered in a way because our scars are what made us. These are the things that have molded us throughout our lives, made us who we are today. So we don't want to release them. We don't want to get rid of them. We want to integrate them. Yes. Integration is bringing it back to yourself. So, yeah, that's what it's designed to do.
Yeah. And when I had seen what you were offering, I was like, she's right in my wheelhouse because I'm a shadow work guide. And so as we talk about integration and we talk about those things that are coming from our childhood, things that we've been conditioned to know about ourselves or think we know about ourselves, the perspectives we've been conditioned to have, it's one of those things of in shadow work, bringing that subconscious to the conscious and saying what parts of this really belongs to me. What parts, as you were speaking about the shattering, I mean, when your shadow comes to the forefront, everything is kind of shattered. Yeah. And you're like, okay, well, who am I really? Who am I at my most authentic self, right?
Yeah.
And so when we think about that aspect of, in the shattering, yes, all these pieces have come from me, but do they all belong to me? So now, here I go, I'm going to put these pieces back together, integration into who I am at a soul's core, right?
Yeah.
So that I can be who I am supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that shadow work, that childhood work, that the whole integration of it all is getting to understand why you were even created.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's the beautiful part of it, right?
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, because we were all born, our soul came here for a purpose of evolution. And what is that evolution that we need to complete by the end of this lifetime?
Yeah. Man. Just talking to my soul here. So now that moves us on to the subconscious release technique that you have as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's part of the memory integration technique too. Yeah. I mean, sometimes, There'll be times where it'll be a very involved session when it's, the memory integration technique, and we can't necessarily go through all of the steps. It's just kind of intuitively led. But I always do the subconscious release technique at the end, because I feel like that is the most important thing, again, integrating the emotions that are attached to the trauma, that was experienced, the pain that was experienced, the distortion, whatever you want to call it. So it is part of the memory integration technique, but it's basically just, breath work and repatterning of the brain, being able to create those new neural pathways so you can just be different without having to think about being different.
Yeah.
Think about, having a different pattern, a different behavior, a different habit doing it without actually having to think about doing it. It's just more of like a conscious effort now instead of the subconscious ruling the world or, driving the bus, so to speak.
Yeah. That makes me think about neuroplasticity.
Yes.
So my wheelhouse is neuroscience. And when we think about creating new habits, we think about creating new patterns. It's that aspect of kind of shedding what we know by replacing it with new things that we're learning, right?
Yes.
And the repetitive nature of it, the staying consistent with it is what's going to repattern those pathways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I just love the concept of neuroplasticity, because, the old dog can't teach old dogs new tricks, just goes right out the window whenever you bring that in.
Yeah.
You cannot tell me that you are not able to shift at any age. Yeah. Everybody has the opportunity to shift at any age.
Yeah,
because
and
of neuroplasticity.
It's exercise, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like when you're trying to build new muscle, or when you have that you've just been sitting for so long, you've been doing the same thing for so long, and it's like trying to build that resistance to that new amount of weight, that new amount of the good habit. It's like it's so hard, but that's the part of giving yourself grace, giving yourself patience, in order to kind of build your way up. Because as you build your way up, you're like, oh, I can do this. Right?
And it's small steps. When I first started coaching, I would send my new clients this image, and it was these two ladders, and one of the ladders had the rung that was, kind of way down, that it was reachable, and then this other image had the first ladder rung that was way above the head. And the person that had the ladder rung down here was like halfway up the ladder, and this person's still trying to reach for it. And it's the symbolism of, don't try to make your action steps too high so they're not achievable. Start small. Like you said, build that muscle. Do things in small increments, and you're going to go far.
Yeah. Give it, and being patient with yourself. I think that's one of the things that we all suffer from, because we want to go from the second step of the ladder all the way to number 11. And it's like, oh, did you realize that your knee may break if if you skip this particular one here, because, and not even just with that analogy, but the pertinent information that we miss when we try to skip steps, when we try to make things happen before they're supposed to happen, or not understand that we have to learn this particular area before we get to this particular goal.
Yeah.
And that's, when you're really over yourself subconsciously, and that subconscious comes to your conscious and you're over yourself, it's like, okay, I'm done with this. I just want to get there.
Yeah.
But then we miss those steps, and we're wondering like, well, why am I still feeling such and such? Why am I still having these same emotions to this? Because you're not taking the steps to heal what was previously there, so that you can get to step 6, right?
And those parts that are playing the part in the sabotage, it's those, if you're not getting to your goal, then you have to go inward, and what parts are still creating that space to sabotage? What parts need to be seen, heard, and validated in order to be integrated so you can get to that goal?
Yeah, and recognizing that your triggers are just that. When you recognize that you have the triggers, it's accept them, embrace them, so that you're aware of them,
right?
And then you can work out of that.
Yeah.
work out of that space, but they're still going to be there because you still have the experience.
Yeah.
But like I say, my 2 R's are response and reaction. When those experiences are there and when your triggers are there, when you do the work, take the necessary steps, then you're going to be able to respond instead of react. Step back objectively and look at this and say, oh, I learned that at step 3. So now, so I'm all over this ladder analogy, right? I'm loving it.
Actually, may I share a little? Okay, so I had something happen, a trigger happen very recently. Actually, I just made a post about it yesterday. And it was about a tank top that I have that's like my beloved tank top. And I pulled it out of the laundry. And one of the straps had snapped. It was like an elastic strap. And my heart sank because it is my favorite, but it immediately gave this flood of emotions and memories. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. What is happening here? What do I need to go inward and seek and integrate? And so I did, some deep work around a piece of clothing.
Yeah.
And when I did the posting, a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, I relate to this, and smells and sounds and music. And yes. I'm like, oh yeah, if it's triggering you, good or bad, you know, that's the opportunity to go inward. Let's turn inward. I wish more people would understand that concept, but yeah.
And I can tell that it still affects you because you're still feeling that emotion.
Yeah.
And give me an example of one of your techniques that you utilized for yourself to get you through that moment.
So I went back to the memory of when I first bought it and who I bought it, or not who I bought it for, but what I bought it for and who was involved. And it was an event, and who was involved in the event. And I'm like, okay, so what part needs to be nourished, and I just, again, turned inward. I mean, it's not really a technique at that point because it's for myself, it's hard and it's the reason why I'm going to create a course for the memory integration techniques so I can have somebody else do it on me.
Yeah, okay. I think I may take that course. Maybe I'll do it for you.
But yeah, it's hard for me to lead myself, but I was able to at least take some steps, do some journaling and some emotional healing and release some of the emotion, or integrate some of the emotions that were attached to, again, that memory. And then I was able to let go of the tank top.
Yeah. I mean, but we think that certain things are just so small.
Yeah.
And when we think of a particular smell or a particular color or a particular, some sort of food, and it just brings all of this stuff back. Like, these things are really relevant.
Yeah.
And it's not that the trigger is not there. It's not that the memory is not going to be there, but being able to step back like you did and say, where is this coming from? Mm-hmm. And just because you have a trigger or you have a memory, because we have to, I think we talked about this too, about words and analogies becoming fads.
Yeah.
Like, we have trauma, we have trigger, we have narcissist, we have all these things, right?
Yeah,
that come
narcissist.
up. But just because you have a memory doesn't mean it has to be a trigger.
Right? Exactly. Yes.
So when we have these memories, remembering that this is something that I came through.
Right.
This is something that I worked through.
Yeah.
That memory is there, but now how am I feeling in this moment?
Right.
It doesn't have to take you way back to the memory and the deep detail of the memory, but just the acknowledgement that it's there is sometimes enough. And I think that that's why people get triggered because they don't understand. You don't have to go all the way back there and live in that moment. You can remember what it brought you and work out of that.
Yeah.
And allow your feelings to come through.
Yeah.
If you want to cry, if you want to, whatever you want to do it in that moment, but don't sit in it so it doesn't become a problem again or a deep-rooted issue.
Yeah.
Right?
Re-traumatizing yourself, really. I mean, when you're sitting in that pain for so long and you assume the role of victim, it becomes your identity, then that's when you re-traumatize yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. I love how you said that, the identity of it all. Let's see. So we've already been talking a little bit about shadow. But what I want, since we're on the subject, can you walk me through what a session with one of your clients would look like when we're doing the integration techniques?
Sure. So we start out by kind of just like a conversation, series of questions, and I'm intuitively, kind of tuning in to see what beliefs I'm hearing, what limiting beliefs are hearing that they're coming through. And then if one keeps surfacing multiple times, like it's a repatterning or a pattern, repetitive pattern, then that's when I start to go a little bit deeper. Of course I ask the client's permission, can we go deeper, on this? And then we figure out like when was this, when did this first happen to you? And if they can recall, which sometimes they can, there's, I have a most recent client who doesn't have a lot of childhood memories, and that is definitely not a red flag, but a flag, that
dissociation.
Yeah, exactly. Disassociation, suppression, definitely some trauma there that hasn't been brought awareness to.
Yeah.
So we figure out, when it happened, and then I start to go into the sensory exercise. Where was this? Down to the color of the walls. If it was in, a room, what color were the walls? What flooring was in it? So when you're walking, you feel it's just, again, the senses. If you had a favorite stuffed animal or toy, sometimes I'll allow them to hold that so they have a little bit more comfort depending on what level of trauma it was. And then that's when we start to shrink the body down and we go into that memory and drop into the pain momentarily, and then allow them to tell me what beliefs were created when this was happening. Mm-hmm. And then I immediately introduce the older version, the adult version, current version, and then the adult version goes in there and champions for that younger version.
Okay.
And then inviting the younger version to connect to the older version, and then ultimately breaking the contract that younger version signed so long ago to keep themselves safe. And then if they are comfortable, coming back into the body of the adult and then growing the adult back up.
Okay.
And then we do the subconscious release technique after that.
That's pretty
intense.
Yeah.
It's very intense.
That is intense. Yeah. It almost reminds me of a sense of like hypnosis. And I've never had it before or anything like that. But when you say that, you shrink the body down, because basically you're taking that person back into their child body,
correct,
into their child mind. Yep. And then it's bringing them back up into the adult mind of saying, hey, we're safe now.
Right.
How do we integrate this? Is this something that we need to hold on to? Is this the part of your childhood that's hindering you? Mm-hmm. Is this what's the cause of your pain?
Right.
Still.
Yeah. Yeah. The patterns that are repeating in your adult life. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you find that when they come to that realization, like really accept it? Because sometimes like we know that things are there, mm-hmm. but until it's like really brought to the forefront, we're not really accepting it and embracing it. Do you find that they're able to start to own it and are willing to make the change?
Speaking in absolutes, I can't ever say, 100% that everybody's always going to be 100% on board, because everybody's different, but majority, yes. And I've never had anybody go through the methodology step by step and not have some sort of shift coming out of it. And I mean, I've served probably well over 200 clients at this point, 200 to 250 clients. And they have this, they either have a minor shift or a massive shift or something in the middle. And tears are usually involved because just the release of the emotions is just sometimes overwhelming. And to be the practitioner, to sit there and be able to hold that space as well is humbling. And to just watch their face change, they start to glow because this light I don't know what the word is, but it just lights them up because a little bit of that shadow, like you're saying, is integrated, and so the light is able to shine through the shadows. So yeah,
And just knowing that it's okay.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's okay. That light that comes through is giving them freedom.
Yeah.
It's giving them, when we talk about the shadow is also that aspect of things being hidden and things being suppressed, things that are not socially normal, things that are culturally not accepted. All of these pieces of yourself that you have to suppress and hide. And then when you do what you do and you bring it out there, it's like, okay, here's your authentic self. You have permission, and you're not waiting for the permission of your family or friends or whoever else. You have permission to be this or to rid yourself of this.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that that's where that light comes, because it's like,
Yeah.
I'm free.
Yeah.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel, right?
Exactly. Well, and I wish more people understood that darkness couldn't exist without light, and light can't exist without darkness. I mean, don't try to be like the shiny, happy people all the time. Yeah. You're allowed to have, the dark feminine and the dark masculine exist for a reason. We have to be able to embrace both and find the healthy balance and the polarity between the two.
Yeah. That's one of those things that really, I would say it bothers me. Because when you have those people who are always smile on, and you have those people who, I think it's a capacity thing too, because they're probably dealing with a whole lot of their darkness and a whole lot of their stuff where they don't have the capacity for anyone else's frowns or tears or their own.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you, no one in this world ever really exist without sadness or without anger or without the opposite of what your facade may be.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's like, people do not do this sort of work that we do. They don't do it because it's scary. How do you face yourself? How do you face your shadow? How do you face your inner child without thinking that you're going to get lost in there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing, especially about, the work that we do is when we do it ourselves, we know that there's light. We know how to get back into the light. So we're not scared to go into the darkness. And that's something that I want to try to bring forth to my clients, that it's okay to go into the dark because A, you know how to get back into the light. And if not, B, I'm going to be there to guide you.
Right. Yeah. And that's the number one thing that I let my clients know. Like, I'm going to lead you here, but you have to trust me and know that I'm going to bring you out of this.
Yeah.
And that's why I call myself a shadow work guide. I'm a grief and trauma coach. Like, I'll coach you through this and I'll guide you through this. And I'm teaching you how to trust yourself.
Right.
To know that you can come out on this other side.
Right.
But when it's a little too heavy, I'm right here.
Yeah.
I'm right here. I promise that there's light over here.
Yeah.
But it's a scary place to be. Being human is just scary, period, right?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
And then you're telling us, okay, this mind that I live with every day, I'm supposed to go deeper and deeper in it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they may not like what they see, and that's okay too, and that's the reason why you need to go deeper, so you can be accepting of those dark parts of yourself, of those shadow parts of yourself.
And realizing that even the dark parts or the shadow parts, they're not all bad.
Yeah, exactly.
You just have to, it's the dialect that you use with them. It's the perception that you have of them. And there are parts of it, that you're going to have to shed away, but there's also parts that you get to keep.
Right.
One of the words I do this with my clients when they have certain words that were spoken over them or certain words that they define themselves with. And so they're like, I'm a perfectionist. I'm like, okay, perfectionist sounds, it's negative, so to speak.
Right.
But let's say you're organized. You like to make sure that you have your ducks in a row. You like to make sure that you have your materials. You like to make sure that you have your resources. You like to be a resource, to be a source. And you want to make sure that things are accurate.
Right.
And you want to be adequate at what you do. So when you utilize different words and you shift their perspective of why they're like this, being a perfectionist is not bad.
Right.
Unless you're judging yourself,
Right.
or unless you're that shadow, that mom, that dad that said you have to do this right. If you're not getting A's, then you're not getting. So it's totally shifting it. And there goes back to that neuroplasticity. If you believe that you're doing this for a good reason and you shift those words that you're using for yourself, you'll understand that you're doing a good thing and not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That shadow becomes something that you can walk with.
Yeah. Reframing. Yeah, exactly. Of course, I would drill deeper. Be like, okay, so you're a perfectionist because there was an organization in the house, and so you had to find organization. Yeah.
But that's that deeper part of understanding, like, why are you like this?
Yeah.
So you have to go to the root cause of it so that you can see where it came from. So you can see, well, this is not something you just came up with yourself, right?
Right.
Someone was drilling this into you. So let's dig that part up. Yeah. Now that we've dug that part up, okay, now how can we make it work in our favor?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and part of the memory integration technique is, working with those younger parts, usually the children, and when the adult can identify those parts as children, then there's a lot more compassion for the shadow parts, for those dark parts, rather than they just being, these parts that they don't want to look at. It's like, but you're not looking at a child. Would you do that in real life? If you were walking down the street and a child was injured, would you just walk past the child? No, you wouldn't. Yeah. So let's have this perspective, the fact that you're walking past your child self.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Yeah. And even thinking about that, would you walk past a child? Some people had those parents that were, like you said, man up.
Yeah.
Or you're not hurt, go ahead and get up. And so when that person walks past the child, that's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
They don't know that it's okay to stop and help. Yeah. They don't know that they may not have the same resources or dialect within self that says, I can get up from this.
Right.
But they're walking past because that's all they know.
Right.
And so really bringing it back in and saying, it's okay for you to want help, need help, and to give help.
Yeah.
Nurture yourself,
Nurture. Right? Reparent yourself.
Reparent yourself.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Now, we have talked about what you do and this magnificent, all these techniques that you have. What brought you into this world? Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you really came into doing what you're doing.
Oh, wow. So my journey began really in 2010 when I was diagnosed with trigeminal neuralgia, chronic facial nerve pain. And I went through the Western medicine route. It failed me. They gave me a prescription drug and sent me to the elevator and really didn't do any kind of MRIs or anything, just like a diagnostic test, and saddled me with Lyrica, which is anti-seizure medication.
Yeah.
I ended up not taking that. I took Tegretol, and I stayed on the drug for 10 days because I lost all quality of life. And I never went back to Western medicine after that. I mean, I went to the gynecologist, and that's pretty much it after that. And I lost all quality of life. I was sitting in the bathtub, bawling my eyes out because I was 35 years old, and I was thinking that my life was over. And I had no idea. I didn't see any kind of light at the end of the tunnel at that point. And I started seeing an upper cervical chiropractor, and he was shocked that nobody had ever looked at my neck and the cervical spine as being a root cause of my facial nerve pain. He got me 100% drug-free and 85% pain-free within one session. Yeah. And yeah.
I'm so interested in knowing how you did that. Please continue.
And it just kind of snowballed from there in a good way, that I started seeing a chiropractor. I started paying attention to what I was eating, what I was putting on my body. I was seeing a colon hydrotherapist, and she had this woman who was an emotional healer that was going to rent out a room next to her office for the day and do sessions. And she was like, I highly encourage you to, because when you're doing colon hydrotherapy, you know, you start chit-chatting. And so she started hearing a lot about my journey. And it was that one session with the emotional healer that just completely shifted everything for me, all the hair on my body standing up right now. Just in a little bit of a nutshell, because it is a very long story. She did a lot of kind of what I do with my clients. And I remember saying, I'm going to do that one day. And this was, again, 15, almost 15 years ago now. She took me back to a memory that I had suppressed. It was extremely traumatic. It wasn't sexual abuse or physical abuse or anything like that. It was just a time where I was not safe. And one of my family members was supposed to be there to take care of me. She didn't. My parents weren't taking care of me because they put her in charge of taking care of me. And I ended up getting injured as a result. And so she ended up getting kicked out of the house that night. Okay. I was 8 years old, and I blamed myself until 35 years old whenever I had this session with this emotional healer. And I remember she was asking me questions, and it was like, it was suppressed, but she was able to break through, or the part just wanted to get released. I don't know what it was, integrated. And it was like this gigantic file cabinet opened up and pulled out this file and threw this file down on a table, and all of these memories just started coming through, and I started bawling my eyes out. And the healer was just like, what's going on? Tell me what you're seeing. And so I told her, and she said, that was not your fault. You were 8 years old. There's no way that an 8-year-old could have been the cause of this. Yeah. You were an innocent in the middle of something that you just found yourself in. And it wasn't until years later that I realized that I had to have that experience in order to make the evolution that I needed in order to be sitting here in this chair today. Yeah. And I chose my family for a purpose. You know, my soul chose my family for this evolution, to be in service to others, to be doing what I'm doing and what I'm going to be doing in the future. But yeah, it was just that one moment in time, that one snapshot in time. It could have gone any differently, and I may not be sitting here today. So it took me a lot of years to find the gratitude for that I'm there, and I know that that was just part of my journey, and that was the beginning. And I was 8 when it happened, you know. So to know why you were born, right? You know, it's an incredible feeling. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
No, it does, because, you know, even when we think about our shadow, we think about our childhood, we don't realize then that it's shaping us for our purpose.
Yeah.
And we don't get to choose. I know that and I want you to talk a little bit about that too, about the aspect of choosing your family. And we don't get to choose how we come into this world to do what we're supposed to do for the world, right? And so at 8 years old, you already started having your shadow built. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about childhood. We talked about that aspect of you being the golden child too. Mm-hmm. And these are characteristics and names, labels that were being put on you that was building your character, that was building your thought process about yourself.
Yeah.
And so here you go at 8 years old. Of course it's your fault. You know, of course it's something that you did wrong. And for you to be labeled even at that time as the golden child, I really must have messed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I really, and to have the effect of the other person not being in the house, I really must have messed up.
Yeah.
So now you grow, there goes your shadow, you grow into all of that, into adulthood. Mm-hmm. And like you said, 35 years old, and you're still going through processes in life, and you're like, that thought in the back of your head is like, oh, I messed up.
Yeah.
I messed up. This is the reason why my life is in shambles.
Yep.
You know, talk about what being labeled the golden child really did to you as a child and as you were growing up.
I mean, at the time, I didn't really have any effect, but when I go back and I reparent her and or nurture her, I realized that she was having to not be herself so she could please others.
Yeah.
And because my two sisters were Hellions, you know, they were a lot older than me. And are you familiar with Dr. Nicole Harmony? She wrote the book How to Do the Work, and she's on Instagram.
Have heard of her. Yeah.
Holistic. Okay. So she has this reel that I just resonated with, and it was talking about how, oh, you're such a good girl. Your brothers and sisters are such, you know, they're so bad. They're so difficult. I'm just so glad that you're good. And then the counterpart is like, yeah, I had to be because I couldn't.
There was no room for you to be.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't express my emotions the way that I wanted to because I, you know, had fear or whatever. So going back to her and being like, it's okay, you know, to be able to cry and have emotions and be able to be bad and, you know, not have that fear of being removed from the house, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, at the time, being the golden child, it just wasn't. And maybe those are some parts that need to be integrated. As I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, yeah, it wasn't anything that I recognized at the time, but now I see how it shaped me. I ended up doing child modeling, and I look back and I'm like, why would I be put into that situation knowing what the industry is? You know, like I said, I spent 17 years in the industry. It's the most toxic environment that you can put a child into.
Yeah.
Why would I be allowed to be there, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, the golden child just didn't really resonate back then, but it does now. Yeah.
And it's almost like you weren't giving a choice.
Yeah.
Given the fact that your other siblings were, they were acting out, they were, you know, doing whatever they were doing, that was because of whatever that you, even if it was just a little thing that you did, was nothing compared to what they were doing. You know, so you were less of a headache than the others were. Yeah. And so, of course, I'm going to be the golden child. And then on top of that, you're expected to be perfect. You're expected not to cause any ruffles. Yeah. So there you go. You're being suppressed.
Yeah.
That throat chakra is shut down. You know, you can't express yourself. You can't be creative on your own because your parents are conditioning you to be how they want you to be. So that makes their life easier. Right.
Yeah.
So here you go.
Yeah.
You know, so those suppressed memories that you had when you were going through that process with the emotional healer, what was one thing that really stood out for you during that process?
How it came forward and the amount of emotion that was released in such a short amount of time, like out of nowhere. Because she kept asking me, she was like, okay, what happened in October of 82 or whatever, 81, 82, I can't do my math right now. And I was like, are you kidding me? I don't remember yesterday. And so she just kept asking questions. And it was just like it was almost like removing a layer, digging, however, whatever analogy you want to use. That onion, exactly. Peeling until there it was. And like I said, open the file cabinet and there was the memory right there in front of me. It was almost like now that I've done ayahuasca and psilocybin, it was almost like that state of consciousness where something just came forward right there and there it was. And I could see it as plain as day.
Yeah.
I could see what happened. I could see the blood coming from my head. I could see, my sister sitting on the stoop of our porch. I could see everything. And it was like a movie. And that was the biggest realization. I was like, wow, I had never, ever experienced anything like that.
Yeah. And isn't it amazing how the subconscious works?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because that was all there. That movie was already playing back there. It's just that when we have traumatic situations like that, we learn how to bury them. We learn how to suppress them because they're way too traumatic for us to continue to deal with. But there goes that projection. So even the things we don't remember, the things that we have suppressed, they come out in our everyday relationships. They come out in the everyday dialect that we have with self.
Yep.
And it's like, why am I talking to myself like that? Or why do I think that? Or why am I perceiving this person to be doing this or that? Oh,
yeah.
Now I know. And the unfortunate thing is that some people never do the work.
Oh, yeah.
To know what's subconsciously going on. And we can only dig back so far. You do Akashic records as well.
Yeah.
And so when we dig very, very far, right?
Oh, yeah.
When it comes down to that, but we have that generational trauma that comes through. Mm-hmm. We have the DNA, all these things that we don't remember that are so suppressed back in that subconscious, and that's really calculated in our DNA.
Yeah.
Talk about the Akashic records.
So, leading into now I'm doing the past lives, so if you have a pattern and we can't seem to figure out, where it is in this lifetime, let's go back to previous lifetimes. Let's go back. I've cleared stuff from 1,000 years ago for like the Viking era kind of thing. Your subconscious is your soul. And so your soul holds all of your records, imagine. And I feel like when I talk about the file cabinet, when I started training in the Akash, that's what it's like. It's a big file cabinet library, again, whatever metaphorical thing you want to use. Yeah. But I feel like that memory came from the Akash when I didn't even really know about the Akash at that point. Yeah. It was in existence, but I didn't know about it. It's just like this gigantic library of everything that your soul has ever experienced. So depending on how old your soul is, how much do you have in the back? And it's interesting because it doesn't necessarily, when you start doing this work, again, I'm not going to speak in absolutes, but when you start doing this work, it's not necessarily going to go directly to the past life regressions because you have to do the onion, you have to peel back the layers. But sometimes those layers do intertwine within that onion. And so it was very imperative to me whenever I started really going deeper into the work and, really started to polish the memory integration technique and bring it forward into something that was the methodology that I could follow and a framework I could follow for my clients, that I find a way to work with the past lives. And the Akash was the most logical thing. And I have an amazing mentor who has been teaching me for 2 years. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's why we say that, what is that term? When you've seen it before, you've done it before, you've been there before. What is the term?
Deja vu.
There you go. Deja vu. That's why we have that term, because it's true.
Soul recognition of another soul.
And it's like you've been there before. You've been in that exact situation before.
Yep.
And it's so weird when that happens, because it happens to me often, but when it happens and you're sitting in front of that person or you're in, and it's just like, how am I supposed to fix my face or not fix my face? Just having that sweep of this whole scenario happened before.
Yeah.
And I seen it, know? So when we think about the Akashic records too, because you also mentioned something else about how your soul chooses your family. Mm-hmm. Tell me why you feel that way.
So again, I think that the evolution of our soul is what we need to do in this lifetime. It's kind of like not a mandated, I don't want to say that word, but it's like premeditated. Your soul is created and it's like, okay, I need to do this evolution. So I'm going to choose this family because it's going to give me that opportunity and create that space in order for me to evolve. So my next lifetime, I can be to this level of evolution and do this next round. It's like polish, throughout the lifetimes. At least that's my belief. So yeah, we have to choose the families that are going to, because, between the ages of 0 and 8 years old, our belief system is created.
Yeah.
And somebody was saying the other day, I think it was a client, and he was like, well, she didn't learn it from me and she didn't learn it from her mom. And I said, really? I said, well, then who did she learn it from? Because she had to have learned it from one of you because she was in the home. And between the ages of 0 and 8 years old, how many other places is she? I mean, because this is, before like Barney and all of that kind of stuff, but how many places was she before she came into contact with somebody to learn something like that?
Yeah.
Like, parenting is a huge responsibility, and I don't think that people understand and comprehend that whenever they go into parenting.
Yeah.
You're shaping and molding another human being. In fact, a podcast that I sent you from Mel Robbins with Gabar Mate, he even went deeper into the fact that when you're in utero, and I immediately started thinking about my friends that are in the high-powered positions, the lawyers, the doctors, with the high stress.
Yeah.
In utero, those babies are experiencing everything that you're experiencing. Yeah. No matter if you're going and doing yoga and meditation, if you're feeling stress, then they're feeling stress. If you are surrounded by stressful people, even though you're able to keep your stress, they're still going to feel that stress. And that was a huge eye-opener to me. I was like, whoa. I mean, I always thought about, if the baby and the mom, they're connected. And if the mom can keep it together, then the baby's going to be okay. But he's saying, no, it is the conditions that are surrounding you. So, yeah, moms, if you've got that high-stress job and you're pregnant, you got to think about the environment that you're putting your zygote, basically in.
And how do you counter that? Do you go watch something funny on TV or, how do you counter, because there's stress all over the place.
Right.
And how do you deal with that and come back down to calming that inner self?
Yeah.
That's something worth studying.
Yeah. That's $1 million question. I don't have an answer for.
That's something worth studying, especially, with being pregnant, because it's like, well, how do I counter that then?
Right. Yeah.
Because your baby's going through stress. Like, that's just something amazing to think about.
I know.
That's,
again.
Yeah.
More power to you guys.
Right. I have clients that, they ask me if I do prenatal Reiki. And I'm like, no, that's something that I wouldn't do, because we're moving around a lot of energy and a lot of stuck things that are in you, a lot of trauma, a lot of, all of these things. And I'm like, you don't understand that your energy is transferring into this baby. Now, yes, baby is where baby is.
Right.
And your energy and the trauma that you have experienced is kind of stuck.
Right.
And it's still being experienced, even though we haven't brought it out. But when we start talking about moving that energy around and opening up spaces, your baby is absorbing all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't know what baby's evolution is. You know, what is its purpose?
Yeah.
How open of a channel is baby?
Yeah.
We don't know, and so, that's
like, don't transfer unnecessary things to baby, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Or, where's that evolution of that soul? I mean, it's, it goes round and round and round and round.
It does. It does. It reminds me of this, a term that is used in neuroscience, and it's the theory of the mind. and it goes into executive functioning. And when we think about, like you said, those ages from 0 to 8 years old, these are where the child is in the home and they are learning, they're being conditioned.
Yeah.
And this is how they learn how to read other people, how
Right.
to talk to other people,
Right.
how are you supposed to perceive,
Yeah.
what's going on around you. And so the impression of the child is learned very early.
Yeah.
How to read a person's face. Is this person tricking me? Is this person serious? Like, there's all these intricate details that are happening, and a lot of parents really don't think about that.
Yeah.
What are we hearing? How are we defining the world, defining people to our children?
Yeah. Yeah. And these.
Oh yeah. That's a whole teacher within itself, right?
Well, no, I mean, there was a TED Talk recently of a little girl. She was like 8 years old, brilliant, and she had a baby come on with the dad, and she filmed on the TED Talk the difference of what happens when the parent is engaging with the child directly.
Yeah.
And then he picked up his phone, and the reaction that the baby had when he had his phone. The baby wanted attention, was trying to grab at the phone, like trying to throw it out. And then as soon as he put the phone down, then the baby was and re-engaged, then the baby was okay.
Yeah.
Now, if this happens all the time, the baby's going to, have that belief of the phone is more important than me.
Yeah.
I'm not important. I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy.
I have to fight for attention.
I have to fight for attention. Yeah. Exactly. And there goes the patterning of getting the negative attention. He was trying to grab and trying to like hit and things like that. Any attention is good attention at that point. Yeah. Negative attention or positive attention. Yeah. So, and John Bradshaw, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's kind of like a pioneer of inner child healing. He's passed now. He passed in 2016, but he wrote a book. It's the Family Systems, and it's Coming Home, I think, is the name of the book. And he talked about how narcissists are created, and they're created by baby looking back at mom or dad or primary caregiver, and mom, dad, primary caregiver looking back and looking at them like they're not enough. Like, that's how the narcissism is started.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that is something worth studying too, because again, that's one of those fads, one of those words that people are just kind of throwing out there.
Yeah.
But it's a real thing, and they're real people.
Right.
And even for empaths, people who are very intuitive, narcissists are really drawn to empaths because it gives them fuel. And so why does it give them fuel? Because exactly what you just said, if it starts where it starts at, then they're looking for that nurturing. They never receive that nurturing. And then they still have the disdain to with the person who didn't give it to them. So they want to cipher it out of the one that has it.
Right.
And they're just continually just angry, and hateful. So, yeah.
And I try to reframe people when they start to call their ex narcissists. I'm like, you do realize that you are labeling a child that was not emotionally developed past this age, that they became this, I hate the word narcissist, so I'm not going to use it, but they became this other version of themselves. And think about that when you're calling your ex, a quote unquote narcissist, because you're labeling a child basically that has absolutely no idea what happened. All they wanted was to be loved, which is one of the human things that, this is a human right to be loved, and they weren't. So remember that whenever you're labeling an ex a narcissist. And some of them get brought down to another level, and then some of them just stay stuck in their identity and their pain.
That's true.
And the victim.
And they say also that the ones we label as narcissists, that some of them really just can't come out of that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
See, I don't believe that, because I feel like we're all, the prison visit, we're all rehabilitated. We can all be rehabilitated. We can all shift. again, it doesn't matter how old you are, what you experienced. You have the ability to shift your life at any given time of the day, of your lifetime, in the moment, of the month, of the year. It's your choice. Yeah. Do you want to choose to stay in the victim, or do you want to rise above and grab your power, really stand in your power?
Yeah. Let's talk about that. That was my next question. So you did go to the male prison. Mm-hmm. How was that visit, and what did you do in there?
Oh, gosh, it was so incredible. I drove out there with the the chaplain who invited me, and she said, do you want me to kind of give you a rundown, or do you want to go in without any expectations? I said, I want to go in without any expectations. I want to go in organically. Okay. And I didn't have any anxiety. I never had like an ounce of fear going in. We went around there was about 500 inmates. It's a minimum security. And what I believe is that it's the end of the funnel of the prison system whenever they go into incarceration.
Okay.
So it's designed to be kind of like a rehabilitation type of environment.
So are they getting reintroduced back into the world?
Yes. They're on their way home, basically, is what it's designed to. So a very small facility, 500 inmates. We went around to, I think, about 6 or 7 different paddocks, and she introduced me. And some people came, we had room for 25. We didn't have room for any more, and we filled the room, and that was amazing. I took them little journals and pens so that they could journal their emotions, their gratitude, their fears, traumas, whatever it was. And they were so humbled by these little journals. They were like, do we get to keep these? And I mean, it just kind of broke my heart. I'm like, of course, yeah, absolutely.
Because again, you're valid.
Yeah.
You matter.
Yeah.
Your emotions matter. Your words matter.
Yes.
Your words change things. And again, you're in a prison, mental prison, walls with prison.
Yeah. And interesting that you brought that up, because the biggest takeaway that I had from that visit was majority of them, well, first of all, probably 98% of them shared. 100% of them, shared as far as like their name and their takeaway and that kind of thing. But majority of them like shared, experiences and, their traumas that they had experienced, and they became extremely vulnerable, which I was so incredibly grateful for. But the takeaway that I got was that they're utilizing prison as this bubble to do the dark, deep work on themselves, because they're away from society, they're away from the noise, they're away from their peers, they're away from their bad patterns, habits, and behaviors. Mm-hmm. They're having this clean slate to be able to do better. And then they want to go back into society as the best versions of themselves. And I thought that was incredible, and all the hair on my body standing up right now. And I might cry, because so many people think that, they're in there and they've been labeled invisible and they don't matter and they're bad, and you name it. There's the list, and society has taught them that, and the fact that they are able to see past that is huge. I mean, that is like an accomplishment in itself. And yeah, and so, but what I did in there was I just kind of opened it up about how your patterns, behaviors, and habits are created between the ages of 0 and 8 years old, and talked about neuroplasticity, and then the imprinting of the belief system, and how that can affect the rest of your life. And a lot of light bulbs went off, and this one man in particular, his dad watched his father be abused by his grandfather, and then it trickled down. Yeah. And then his dad abused his mom, and he said, I'll never do that. And he ended up abusing his wife and his daughter, and he is reading all the parenting books now, and he's so excited for me to come back in March. He just got in there, and he was like day 5 whenever I showed up. And he said, I never thought about the fact that I watched this. My dad watched it. His dad watched it. It's a generational curse, pattern, however you want to call it, and it breaks with me. And I said, that is exactly right. It breaks with you. And the fact that you've made that declaration means that it's going to happen. And all you have to do is take steps in order to do it. And he actually got my website and everything. He was like, when I get out, I'm going to find you and I'm going to work with you.
Yeah. And that is something that they, it's surrounds domestic violence. And I think it goes like whatever sort of abuse.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times it happens to where you are the observer.
Yeah.
And then you're the victim.
Yeah.
And then you're the perpetrator.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like this vicious cycle that you would think that, some people are on opposite sides of the spectrum of saying, I would never do it and actually never do it.
Yeah.
And then you have those ones that, because of conditioning, because of the environment, this is what you end up doing.
Yeah.
And with that being said, too, yes, it's because of the environment, but the anger that you have because of the environment that you were in, because of the things that you were observing, now you're becoming the perpetrator because of this harbored anger and resentment that you have. And so you want to go hit somebody. You want to go and, beat on the woman who is a little bit weak because you've seen your mother getting, just all of these things that go back and forth. Yeah. So I'm glad that he was able to put all of that together and understand why.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that go on with us as people, it's because of what we've seen.
Oh, yeah.
We can blame it on XYZ, mom, dad, environmental circumstances. We can blame it on that. But a lot of us have to get to a point where we start taking accountability and take the responsibility to come into ourselves and say, okay, I have to change.
Yeah.
I have to be the one that stops this, right?
Yeah.
So that my children don't go down the deep end, And we already know that our children have their own journeys. There's only so much that we can do, right?
Yeah.
But to alleviate at least something, possibly, it's our responsibility to do that when we know better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't want to rob people's of their own soul's evolution by stepping in and doing too much. That's the helicopter parenting. Yeah. But if you can break something like that, of a pattern of abuse, I mean, bullies are created by other bullies.
Right.
If you have a bully in school, then that bully is probably being bullied at home or abused, at home. And that's the unfortunate thing. We're a product of our environment. Yeah. So be aware, be conscious, and practice discernment as to who you surround yourself with, who your children are surrounded by, and Yeah, because
we're always building shadows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shadows don't only start when you are a child. They start with all the experiences that you have throughout life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome. So tell me about, so we know that you're a nomad, a digital nomad on top of that. So you travel around everywhere. What is your next business venture? What are some projects that we can look forward to seeing from you?
So 2025, I have 2 goals. Okay. A TED Talk and the memory integration technique course, because I want somebody to be able to do it for me.
Like, please.
But no, in all seriousness, I see the effects that it has created, the shifts that it has created. It took seeing it and becoming confident that now I'm like, okay, now it's time to release it to the world and allow other people to benefit. I mean, I can't help everybody. Yeah. I need purpose partners, along with me. So it's already in creation. It's just taking those smart steps, those small steps to bring it to fruition. And then the TED Talk, probably towards the end of the year, I would think. Okay. Maybe, I don't even know. I just know that now, again, the confidence behind the memory integration technique, I think, would make an incredible topic for a TED Talk, and be able to, again, bring that wisdom and bring that to the community, to to the public and start to make these gigantic shifts that are needed in the collective consciousness right now.
Yeah. Awesome. I can totally see you doing this TED Talk.
Yeah.
I see me watching you already. I see this happening. Okay. Well, all of your information will definitely be under the podcast information. So we will, how do we get in touch with you, and how do we start kind of, we know that you're doing the techniques, but not necessarily the course, because that's not built yet. But how do people get in touch with you in order to go through this transformation as their practitioner?
The best way is to go to my website, NicoleHarmony.com, and it'll be at the bottom of the show notes, I'm sure. There's several different options on there you can either book a free session that's just kind of like a get to know you, I'll assess, kind of where you are in your journey and how I may be able to support you the best, and then offer the investment from there. You can also book a one-to-one session, either Akashic Records or a memory integration technique session directly from the website. So those are the best ways.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much for
you, Carly.
coming in and talking to me.
Thank you.
Coming into the shadow box. So again, all her information will be down in the notes. And I just thank everyone for coming into the shadow box with us and taking this time to learn all of this beautiful things that we have going on right now. And like she spoke about the collective, there's a collective of people that are experiencing a lot of awakenings, coming into themselves to really figure out who they are, and to make sure that they are projecting themselves in a way that that the world needs them to, so they can really interact with the people who are crossing their paths. And so this is what the Shadow Box is about. We're bringing in experts and lovely people who share their own stories, like Nicole. And we just want to bring everyone in and have this safe space to open up the floor for discussion. So again, I am your host, Carlise. This is the Shadow Box, and thank you for spending time with us today. Namaste.